What's up, guys? Kobani here with another video, and I'm remaking an old video I made regarding a substance designer material, and it had some errors in the video, so I'm just redoing it. But basically, this one's going to be faster, and I'll also be providing the material in the description. So if you do not want to go through how to create a material, I'll be providing the end result in the description, and it's going to be a free download. I'm trying to create some. I'm trying to give some stuff for free. So I created this material like 2 years ago, so it's very old for me, and it's been a while since I used Substance Designer because of work. But I think I can remember exactly how I created the material, and I'll just be going through and breaking it down. So let's just get right into it. So the end result was this material is this right here is basically good for for floors, and if you want, you can use it for a wall too. But let's see, if I change the scene material to something like a plane, you can get more of an idea. So this is how it basically will look like, and it's created to be tiling. And so I'm just going to go through and show you some other variants I added to the material. And you can see it has these screws in here. The resolution you choose will dictate how good the material looks in the end result. So right now I think I'm on 2K, which is also, it's set to 2K just so that my computer doesn't lag, because materials tend to get laggy the more resolution you add. And also, even though I created this material 2 years ago, I'm glad I kind of saved my stuff in boxes. I began doing that just so that when I come back to materials, it's easier for me to remember where stuff is. And also, when I want to share materials, other people can download it. I think when you download a material, it should come with the boxes too. But if it doesn't come with it, actually it should, because I think that's how Substance saves the material. This also, as a heads up, this material was created in 2018.2. So, well, it was created in an older version, but I updated it to save in 2018.2. So if you're using a newer version and it doesn't work, please let me know. I'm thinking of upgrading my Substance, but they are changing their model and all that stuff, and because I use it less now, I don't have an incentive to buy it, although I might be going back into it for videos and stuff. But to start off this material, we started with the like large shapes, and I went to the smaller shapes, and basically the smallest. I tend to like working with the large shapes, and I also, in my end material, I tend to add this base material right here. It's the PBR base material, and you can activate nodes that you want to review. Open up and connect to. So basically, since I tend to create most materials to be PBR, this I have the basic ones, which is base color, normal, roughness, ambient, and height. Height can be ignorable because normal map is technically that, but I tend to save out height because in Unreal Engine, I tend to use the height for something else, and also I use it for some unique features, which I think, if I remember right, I should be able to show. And also, so metallic is currently white for this material because there's nothing fancy in here like wood or anything, but it's also saved out just so that I can add more variants, and I'll show you guys that in the future. So let's start with actually let's see one of the effects. Well, now let's start with the simple stuff. So the simple stuff, the large shapes will be the basic one. So for the large shapes, it's obviously the square, and then it goes smaller into the cross symbol or the plus symbol, and then the smaller squares, and then the circle. There's circle in the middle. So I'm going to show you guys how I created this design here. And basically in Painter, in Designer, it's mostly just stacking shapes and creating your materials. And also reference helps a lot. And I think I created this material to reference back in the day. So to start off, I have the square shape here. Basically, take the shape node, and if you download this material, you can quickly just use it. And actually, you don't have to watch the whole video, but I just like to make a video in case there's something I need to go over. But I have the scale down here to 0.75. Some of these numbers are very specific because I tested them back in the day, but I can't remember exactly why. I did some stuff, but I'll try and go through. And if I change this shape here, I tend to try and change my nodes to see what it changes. So when I change this here, it changes the sizes of the squares. So as you can see, this is controlling this right here. So if you want, you can do that, but I chose this number for a reason because it works well for me. So with the shape here, I tend to add transform 2D, and the only reason I add transform 2D sometimes is, even though it doesn't change here, it's just so I can come in here and move stuff around if I need to. And also I can export this node, or I can reveal some nodes in here in the future if I wanted to, and create like an offset system. That'll make it a bit more dynamic, but for this shape or this material I didn't add that. So if I were to go, let's say I had to make this, let me turn it off. If I were to change the rotation, I could make it, oops, I went exactly by 2, so that didn't do much. Let's put it on 0. If we do a, okay, let's select this material again, and so basically if I do something like this, let's assume this was a perfect 90-degree, we could change the material to look something like this. So it's one reason I tend to save out this node, and also I'll go through and change it for the back side too. So, but for this specific one, it seems I didn't do that. Usually I'll tend to export the angle, and when I say export the angle, I'll show you guys in the future. So after that, you have to blend stuff together. So to add a circle here, I just added another shape, and then I added a circle. And I'm coming off of the assumption that you guys know the basics, and I recommend watching Algorithmic's video on Designer where they went through the basics. So basically, some of these nodes, you know how to work with the basic nodes, and also invert the colors if need be, and create shapes. So when you create a node like this, I don't know if in the newer version stuff has changed, but I'm using this is going off of the 2018 version. So usually when I create nodes here, as you can see, the pattern right here is where you change the shape. So if I change to a square, let's change to a square, and bell, but the bell is mostly, what's its name? It's everything is 2D in this in Designer, so bell is just basically a sphere, or I mean a circle with the shading at the edges, on the edges. But I didn't want it for this shape, so I chose the disk. And if I were to choose the bell, let me show you something. So I have to remember this is a 0.39. If I increase the size of the bell, you'll see the effect we get. So something like this can be used to create like dents and stuff if you warp it and do other stuff, but that wasn't what we were going for over here. So okay, so after that we blend the materials together, and the blending of the materials, I just add a subtract, which what happens with subtract is that it takes the foreground and the background and it subtracts each of them to create this black circle here. And after that I just invert it to get my whites, so that way I get the I make the I I make the inner parts negative and then the outer part positive, which is basically the description of an inversion. But this way we create the main shape. This is basically the main shape we wanted here, and basically we feed it multiple times to create other stuff. So let's move on to the next shape, which would be the the next shape would be the little grids inside. With that one, it's just a basic square shape again, but this time it feeds into a bevel. Now what bevel does is that it basically, imagine a 3D bevel, but you're doing it in 2D, so it creates a nice gray outline on the sides. And I'm going to change the distance so you guys can see what it does. So 0.5 or 0.05 was the number. So this is what the bevel will do. If I were to invert it a bit, we get this shape right here. So you can also expose this node so it can be more dynamic. And basically we created a new design just by doing that. So that's how flexible Designer is. I might make that mistake a lot. It's what happens when you use multiple softwares. Oops, wrong one. If you want, you can increase the bevel a bit more. And this one reason I'm making a video, so in case you want to change some stuff, you know where to change them. So and so after that we do the bevel, I created another shape, and they are not the same size. So if you look over here, the scale is 0.6, and this scale is 0.69, and well, it's just a minor shape change. But what happens is that when you when I overlay them and I subtract, I get this black hole here, and that is very important for this one here. So if I were to change to show you what exactly this smaller box is doing, if I had to change the scale from 0.6 to anything else, sure, let's make it smaller. So I made it so that I can basically change this like this. And the only reason is that is to cut off the black box, this little part here, because this one is acting as a cutoff point for these dots or these holes over here, because of how I created the holes. So that's why this is a bit junky in my opinion, because when I created it, it required me to make sure they lined up on the edges. It's one reason the numbers are so weird, and why 0.6 works. But it creates a little edge over here, but that's not a big deal for me, at least, because you have to really zoom in to see something like this. And if anything, I could have made it also a bit larger, and it will cut off that part. I think I'll keep it at 0.6 too, although it might not be the same on the final save file. If there's anything I change here, won't be the same on the save file, or basically the one I'll make available for download, because that one is already saved out. And also, when you open the file, it might tell you to update some stuff. Just update them. If it causes errors, then try and open it without updating. Usually, Substance keeps forward compatibilities. Backwards compatibility that doesn't work usually. But I've no as I'll repeat again. I've not used the new versions, so anything that might change, please let me know. Let's see. So yeah, after we cut it off, basically technically we already got this shape here, and we can just keep it right here. So let's move on to the holes. The holes, I tried to make it simple, so I didn't want to create anything too complicated. So what I did is I took the paraboloid, which over here too, you can also come back and change it. And if you want to create a new material, you can do this. But be warned though, the way I created the holes, you get this error here. As you can see, these ones are lined up vertically, whereas these ones are lined up horizontally. So I'll show you what's causing that later. It's because it's something in my one of the tiling that I used, I rotated them, but because they are all squares, you don't see the rotation. So you can fix that later. But on default, this is the shape. They are all rectangular. I mean, they are all vertical. But to go back to disk, I made them a bit. Well, actually, why did I make it a bit warped? I don't know. Usually, I don't know why I didn't make it a perfect circle, or close to a perfect circle at least. So yeah, we could just do that. And I think maybe I was trying to be a bit fancy, because I try and make shapes not perfectly lined up, so it just adds a bit more realism to it. This is very minor, so you can ignore it. But as I said, anything I do here won't be in the final. So let's say these are the holes here. And so for the holes, you take the shape node again, you create the holes, you tweak your numbers here until you get what you want, and then you take a transform 2D. And the transform 2D here is, if you look at the differences, you can tell what I changed. So I changed the scale. But the way transform 2D works is that sometimes it resets the numbers, so it might be hard to tell. So if I had to think it's spacebar, I've not used Substance in a while, so I can't remember the shortcuts. So yeah. So on default, the transform 2D looks like this. If I compare the differences, so it seems I changed the scale, but I'm trying to see why I changed the scale. I won't be able to remember everything I changed. I was trying to see the difference of scale, but it seems that the transform 2D. Yeah, it seems it resets the numbers, so I can't. But usually what I do is, you can take this right here, And if you press and hold Alt, oh wait, I know what I did. Okay, that's what happened. So in Transform 2D, as you can see, when I scale it, it's tiling infinitely. So what I did is you go here and you go to the tiling mode and change it to no tiling. Yeah, I remember that now. This now. So in order to change it, it's grayed out, so you can't change it. You have to click. I think it's here and change it to relative to absolute. I think. Yeah, you have to make it absolute, so it only works off of itself, and then switch to no tiling. That way, when I scale it now, it doesn't tile, and that way that's how I got it to actually cut off. Okay, that was what. Wow, I forgot. But the reason being, if I change it back to no tiling here, oops, I mean tiling. If we change it back to no tiling, we don't need this part here anymore. Which actually thinking about it, I think, yeah, I think I might have done because, as I said, I created this 2 years ago, so there are some errors I might have made in the beginning. Why did I care about this not tiling? Actually, I think I cared about it not tiling because of a rotation thing in the future. Because if I made it not tile, there must be a reason. Because right now, as switching it to tiling didn't change anything. But I think when I did something in the future, I caused an issue, so I came back and made it not tile. So for now, let's keep it to no tiling, and we'll come back. So after that, just invert the grayscale again. Well, I invert the grayscale, which in this case, it seems I didn't use the invert grayscale. Did I? Yeah, it's false. So why did I invert? Oh, I was probably testing out. Okay, yeah. So I added some nodes in between, so that I could give the user a way to change the material a little bit slightly. So basically, let's say you wanted to use the same material in another room in the environment or something, and you didn't want it to look like the same material. You could just basically switch it to this, and this looks like a different material. Hell, this could go to the ceiling, and if anything, we could go back down here and then rotate it by a 90-degree angle. And we could get like just random materials. Granted, this isn't the best work, but actually I think this is better work here. So let's say this an offset. Oh, where's the rotation? 90 degree. And let's say we come to this transform 2D here, then rotate it here instead. There we go. Now, technically, you could create this as a different material. I could come here and switch this to tiling. Seems that didn't. Oh, okay, I know why that didn't do anything, because right here we are cutting it off. But yeah, I basically could turn off the cutoff here, so that way it scales more. Well, actually, wait, we could just come here. Yeah, it's okay. That's why I added the square, because I could control. It allows me to control the cutoff, so that way. Yeah, that's why I added that square. Now you see, now I remember a bit. So this way we just created like a new material, almost. Oops. And yeah, and this could be like in a different environment, and we didn't have to create a whole new material to do this. We just use the same material, change shapes up around a bit, and then it just looks a bit different enough. So I'm going to control Z, and then yeah, okay. So so after that it's just a blend right here, and it's set to subtract again. This time it's subtracting from this base shape here. This shape was used multiple times, and I transformed it again just to switch off tiling. Usually this one's if usually the tile, but you don't see it because I cut it off. And I think if you press, I can't remember, is it tab? No, there's a shortcut here to make it so that you can see tile, and I can't remember. It's been a while, so forgive me for that one. Is it over here? Background image, copy view, and too bad. Wait, actually, maybe it's down here somewhere. So I go repeated tile. Okay, yeah. So over here is tiles, but with this one here, we can prevent it. It will view as tiling because of the view. Okay, yeah, I remember now. Even though it's not tiling, but basically the way you know it's not tiling is that when I scale it, it doesn't do anything. it doesn't tell. So we beveled again, just basically we created this shape here, and right now it's just flat. So I just beveled. Oh, actually, yeah. Another reason I wanted to cut off some parts here. You can make it so that the circles don't cut off, or if you want them cut off. But that comes down to tweaking the shape. And I beveled it just so that they look like holes instead of just flat circles. And yeah, so it's very simple here. We blend again. I just blended again, just oh wait, I blended again just to bring it back into this overall shape here. And that's why I did the cutoff here slightly with this. So we blended these two with this one, and this is where it doesn't tile anymore, by the way. So and then we bring it back all into the overall shape, and we have like basically we have one large crate. Oh, I call them grates, but I couldn't think of a word for them, so I just but we have one large tile basically. And this way it comes into another place where the histogram range. So histogram range basically grace makes the stuff. It allows you to change the range, which is from black to white. We add more the in between, which would be the gray. So I just use a histogram range because it's very simple. It doesn't require much tweaking. So I just take the position and the range and you can tweak it here. If I had to change the range, you can see what's going on in here. It's basically bringing the grades forward, but we want them to go back. So it's basically our way of faking 3D. So the more I push it back, the more it changes. But as you can see, when I do push it back, it's changing color a bit too. But that's because the roughness is changing too. But let's go back to the default. I hope this is the default. Oh, look at there it is. Okay, so after that, I just blended it. I just blended it again. So I blended the original with the histogram range version. And you might see some of the noodles warp around. Sorry about that. You can fix them yourself when you download them. And this time I multiply, I didn't subtract because we want both of them in there. So you multiply, and the one in the background basically we cut off the gray area from the histogram range. And after that we bring it back again into the shape. So this time this right here is behind the white box here. And after that I added another cutoff here, which is just so that I wanted to create a hole for this knot to be in. And this was a design choice. Everything here is basically a design. I think I did this material mostly just to experiment. So after that, we are done with the basic shape. You can be done here and you can be off. But the rest that comes is mostly subjective design. So basically, usually when I finish everything, I pull it out to another blend. So as you can see, I ended here with a blend, and I pull out a blend back here just so that I can keep on adding. Like the blends is where you add, you divide, you subtract, you multiply. So just think of it like math. So for the screw, oops, well, for the screws or the screw holes actually. Oh, actually, I remember now. At first, I wanted the screw stairs to sit on it. You can do that, but I indented them a bit just so that I can fake the idea of the screw head not showing properly in lower resolution. Even though over here you can see my screws actually have screw heads, or they have a design on them, but in case the resolution was low and they won't be able to see it, if a screw is large and it's lying on it, it's not a screw anymore. It's mostly I forgot what it's called. It's not a bolt. It's something. Is it? No, but basically it's not screwed in there. It's like it's hammered in there, or sometimes it's like it's screwed, but then they use they touch the top of the screw and melt it together or weld. There is no welding, but I forgot what it's called. There's terms for this, but it's basically just so that it can be screwed out again. In order to remove it, you have to actually like use another tool. It's almost like the one on the car. Basically, what is used for the car tires instead of they obviously don't screw and car tires with normal stuff. I digress. um, so for the screws, I created the holes first, then I did the actual screws. You don't have to do this whole part here. It's a bit. You could just do the actual screws and make it lie on top with the histogram range, and basically everything that happens from here on out, we're pushing stuff back and pushing stuff forward with the mostly the gray stuff gets pushed back the furthest. So basically, this over here, tweaking your grayscale is what will decide what's in front and what's behind, and that's how you lay out materials in Substance, where you see those cool cathedral textures where they have like a bunch of materials. It almost looks like it was modeled in 3D. It's mostly just tweaking the grayscale very precisely, and even the most subtle change in the values will push something back enough to make it add more to the design. So for the whole, I just have like a basic circle. I blurred it just to, instead of using bevel, blur is more cheaper. All of these cost a bit of memory, but blur is cheaper. It's very simple. We didn't need a complicated thing here. And actually looking at it, I cut off a bit here. You can tweak that, but if I change the blur, so it seems that this blur is not doing anything because I transformed it so much. It doesn't matter much. But I did all this just so that you see that like there's a tweak over here that you notice. Because when I'm viewing them in a 4 by 4 view, you can tweak this to scale to tile more or tile less. So that's why I added these little details so that because the less the tile, the more details will pop out. So after I did that, this is where I did more of tedious work. I think there's easier ways to do them now or do this, but back in the day, this is the technique I used. Well, I won't recommend it, but unless, I think there might be a better way, but I'm not sure. But what I did was I just took the transforms and manually moved them around. I also turned off tiling. Also, if you move there, you see tiling, and I just moved one, mirrored it, moved another one, mirrored it, and all that stuff. Actually, if anything, you can just do one and then mirror with a mirror node. If there is, does it exist? I think there's something called mirror should exist. Let's see. Oh yeah. So yep, this will be cheaper than doing what I did. So you see, this just came into my head. I couldn't even. So if I do this, this will be cheaper. Oops. So I think if you press Shift and drag, is it Control or is it Alt? I remember. I think there's a way to copy a node. Is it Control Alt or Control Shift? Nope. Hmm. Hmm. I could have someone. Oh, it just. That's it. Nope. Okay. I thought there was a way to copy a node. I think there is, but I can't like to a shortcut to copy and paste a node. So you could just do this, and that's where we have these two shapes here. And if I compare them, could have sworn to shift. That's it. Shift Alt. Oops. Oh no, Shift Alt does something else. Shift Control. Huh. I guess I could just manually copy and paste it. Copy selection and then paste it right here. Because the reason I don't like it is because it pastes with the. Okay, so I just want to compare them. And looking at it, yeah, this is way faster than what I did here. So as time goes on, you remember, like, I don't know why I didn't do this back in the day, but I think I probably didn't think of it. Because when you're working on the stuff, sometimes you forget about some stuff. To be honest, I guessed the mirror node existed. Wasn't sure whether it existed or not. So looking at them, the end results, they are the same. So yeah, instead of doing this transformation that I did here, you could just do the mirror nodes twice, and you have the same results. And this one reason I wanted to go over the stuff because there's some stuff that I'll change if I were to go back. Which actually, since I just discovered this, I think if you press Alt and drag, nope, is it Control and drag? Nope. Okay. Shift drag. Yep. Okay. There we go. I'll be trying to remember some shortcuts, so sorry about that. Yeah, I'll come back and usually when I come back to materials and that unconnected nodes, I delete them. So if I remember, I'll delete this. Okay, so the center sphere is very simple. It's just another shape. This time I think I used the paraboloid. Yep, and I histogram scanned it, which is different from histogram range, but the difference is that it's almost like a bevel, but I use it for smaller stuff like this, so I can use it to change the node. I mean the design here, so you can get like a more of a sphere or what I used to have, which was like I flattened it. I wanted it to be a bit flat at the top. Basically, I think of how it will be lit when it's being used in Unreal Engine, And since these are 2D materials, it's mostly the lighting is mostly fake. Like, actually, I can't remember how do you move the lighting in this one. Oh, oh, okay. So yeah, basically, the more when we do anything, we just bring it back in. So this time I subtracted again, and I brought this in. Then I did a add linear dodge. Now, as you can see, this time I did an add linear dodge. Reason being, if you just do an add, I think there was a reason I did that. Oh no, actually no. Oh no, the add linear. I mean, say if you do an add sub, you get this effect here, which basically it takes all the black parts and it's basically don't do an add sub. But I don't. I think it's one of the rare ones. Is the rarest one I use. But maybe in the future I'll need it for something else. Um, so yeah, I think that's it for for the larger shapes and the screws are a bit. This was me just wanting to create screws to be honest. So just create the shape, cut it up, and you can't see it. Mostly when I'm creating materials, I create them one by one in the sense of like I don't preview them compiled like this. I usually have like a node here that I'll use to preview the material as large. Then later I'll make it smaller. So over here you can do the same thing I did down here for the mirrors. And if I remember actually, I copied these transforms here and I pulled them up here and I just used reconnected the screws. So instead of doing that again, I could just do the mirror and instead of doing this blend, and that will work too. And if anything, actually, this will work better because to be easier to expose nodes. And if you want to learn how to expose nodes, then algorithmic has a video. Actually, you don't even have to watch a video. You can go to like an article or something. Although the more complicated stuff you want to expose, you have to watch videos for that because especially with colors and stuff, if you want to give the user more in-game and like control at the end. Okay, so yeah, the center sphere I already went through it. So this levels was added here just so we could tweak the screws coming back into everything. I tend to add levels too in between nodes. So let's preview this. Yeah, you can see the screws changes a bit. And you can change the design just slightly with the levels node. And even actually this one looks a bit better, although because of the low resolution you can't see the design properly. I don't change the resolution or else if there's lag it might cause problems. So you can, when you download the material, you can change the resolution to any resolution. Right now I preview at 10K, but while I'm working I usually work at 2K and I save at 10K just so that the memory it doesn't save as a large file. So after that we do everything, the big blend comes into play, which is the blend and tile. So I add one more blend. That I add the a sharpen node just to, because we do so much blurring and everything here. So I do a subtle sharpen. It's not, you don't go too far with it. Just a very subtle one. You have to add it, but it's mostly a personal thing. Like the more you work with your materials, you tend to know how you feel about some stuff. So if I to increase the sharpen too much, you see we'll lose some of our blurs here, but it was just a personal touch here. And then the actual tiling comes into play. So when it comes to tiling, most of the time there's tile generators. There's a couple of tiling techniques in Paint in Designer, and tile generator is one of the ones I use the most. And as you can see over here is where I start exposing nodes. So I expose these two nodes here, so I can't change them. But it's so that when I go into Unreal Engine, I can change them in there instead of having to come back to here and tweak stuff. And I'll recommend learning to expose nodes and stuff, and basically nodes and how to do more complicated exposing, which I kind of, I'm not explaining a bit good, but I hope you guys understand. But when you expose the nodes and go to Unreal Engine, you could basically change something like tiling without having to come back here and retiling the material and exporting the textures one by one and everything. Because usually when you export the textures, they export as base color and all that stuff. But when you export it like this, you are stuck with this. But when you export as an SBS, I think it's an SBSAR or something, where you use the Substance plugin in Unreal, and it allows you to be more dynamic with your textures. But that's a Unreal Engine thing, and it's Substance working with Unreal Engine. But basically this is the final tiling right here. And as you can see, one thing I did with my tiling node is there's a lot that goes in here. So we have an image input obviously because we are using an image input. And also when you're using these nodes, make sure they are grayscale, not the color nodes, because most of the nodes have like a color variance and a grayscale variant. So I have the pattern input distribution on random, but if you do by pattern number, we have no pattern number here, so the default usually works here. And you can see that my colors are all over the place. All my values are all over the place. This is a very subtle thing I did just to give the tiles different heights. It's hard to see, but it's just a mental thing that I added. Is something like the imperfections. Some they might be hard to see, but they mentally make the material look more realistic. When something looks too perfect, it looks 3D. Like when you see a character smooth skin, you're like, okay, that character looks a bit 3D. So the rotations, basically, if I it doesn't matter much here because I didn't do any rotating on this material. And I think most of the stuff are default when it comes to the pattern. Size is where I didn't change anything on size because if you change size, that's what happens. It's not individually changing the size of each square because we are taking one square and we are tiling multiple times. But I think it's this one interties or interstice. Or that's where you change the basically the gap in between the tiles. So if you want to change the gap, you use this node right here. But I didn't use it because I was happy with what I got. And if you do a scale random, you get this where basically to do what it says, scale random. But I didn't want that for this shape at least. We go to size. Let me control Z until pattern loses its star. Doesn't matter much. Okay, so let's go to position. But there nothing changed much here. If you do an offset, you get this right here if you want this. So if you do a 0.5 offset, I think was it 0.5? There was a number that yeah, I think it's yeah, roughly 0.5. You get like a brick-esque effect, but it doesn't work with this shape because you are working with squares and stuff. So there's rotation, which we didn't use rotation. If you rotate, each of them rotate like the way that. By this time you're rotating it as square, so if you want to rotate your material and look like this, although obviously something like this doesn't tile properly. If you want to do a rotation like that, it has to be 45 degrees. Where it's rather easy, it's easier to type it like over here. But 45 degrees rotation will have to be tweaked shape-wise, so it becomes like diamonds where their points touch. But that's if you design the material to work like that, and I didn't design this material to work like that. And on the end, it's just color. This is why I added the luminance random. You don't add luminance random, but as you can see, when I turn it off, everything looks like it's on the same plane. But when I add the luminance random, it pushes some stuff back and it just adds variance to how they look. And also, this will become very important when it comes to colors. And you see that some colors are changing a bit. It's because of how I use this to create the colors in the end. So let's go back. I think this is fine enough. But basically, technically, we are done here. You can keep this as a final. The rest is basically me adding just stuff, more variance. So I use this right here to create a color. So for color, I added a histogram scan, which basically now this is, as you can see, it changed whatever changed here. So if I tweak the histogram scan here, nothing gets affected. But the more I add, so basically this is the histogram scan, what it's doing here, because I'm using it as a mask for this material right here. So I have something here called rust, and I'll show you guys what it is. So over here I have the material color created. Now I created the colors. I use uniform colors for this one, and usually you use more complicated colors and stuff, but for this material I think it was simple enough that I wanted to use uniform colors. So I just use a uniform gray color, a uniform brownish color, and I overlap them, but I use the histogram scan here to basically make it look like this. And I took a noise where this one is black and white spots one, sharpened it a bit. You can see the difference. And I switched to, I did a switch grayscale. Reason I can expose it and then turn it off or turn it on. The reason this is here, when I looked at materials like this and I zoomed in, they tend to have this like grainy effect in the color. It looks like dust or powder that is embedded in the color itself. It's not actually like dirt. So over here I just used white or a light white. It's not like it's gray. You don't use a perfect white, and it just sadly sprinkled on top of everything. And after that, I added this rust looking color here, and I put it here. Now as you can see, when you look at this right here, you don't see it. That's because the mask is over here. So this mask is where the rust comes into play. So for the rust, I took then what I created the normal map with. So for normal map, let's go back. So over here, we take the final blend or the tile generator here. Usually I like a blend in between, but I think or levels in between here, but I didn't do that. For this material, I take a dirt, add the levels. As you can see, it's hard to see, but if you zoom in, you see what the levels is doing here. But if I had to change it, actually you can't see it because of it's being hidden in the final here. But basically the reason was for this was, oh yeah, this is where the blend is. Oh, there is, yeah. So as I said, I usually add a final blend. I use this dirt, and I add a subtle like effect here, and I put it here. So what we do is that we come here, add a Gaussian noise. Gaussian noise is usually good for adding a warp effect on stuff. And histogram range again, just to clean it up a bit, if you look at it. And I add it on top of it with add linear dodge, or basically an add. So if you look at the difference between this and this, it seems to, oh yeah, I expose the opacity. So all this one was used to add dents, and right now it's not being affected because I've not tweaked it, and I'll show you guys. So this basically, if you see, you can see the opacity over here. It's like it has this blue light and blue color here. It means I exposed it. It might look different in your version, but the fact that I can't tweak it here means I exposed it. And so this final blend here is what I used to create the normal map, because I wanted this effect that I added to also happen in the normal map when I change it. For normal map, I just use the normal the normal node, and intensity. You can tweak the intensity if you want. Find the number that you want. You can save it as a OpenGL or DirectX. You can look up the differences and see what you want. But one will be inverted, and you might, depending on what software you're using, as a final. And this same blend also was used for the. I think this one goes into roughness, if I remember right. Yeah, it goes into roughness. For roughness, I tend to just do a histogram range, do a subtle levels tweak, and I overlap it with the. Usually I don't do this final, but this final overlap was also used for this rust right here, which I'll show the rust. So that's why this final blend was added. Usually this would have been the final, but I added this here. And right now it's darker because of this, but I can tweak it if I want. But I didn't care much for that. I think I found the opacity was nice enough, so I didn't, because I didn't want this metal to be too shiny. If something is too shiny, it can distract from the level. So I'm just trying to go through. So ambient occlusion, okay. Ambient occlusion was created with the ambient occlusion node, which is a very convenient node in Substance. Usually it doesn't require much tweaking, so I just did a tweak what you want radius wise, samples and all that stuff. And I use the ambient occlusion to also help with this here. And yeah, I think that's it. And oh yeah, for the height. So height is basically the final that we have here. Usually you use the height to create the normal map. So usually most of the time your height will be your normal map. But sometimes I add the levels here, so I can tweak some stuff or change some values slightly. But for this one, I think I was fine with it. So yeah, I think that those are all the final nodes. So now let's go to the rust. So for the rust, I use this node here called MG dripping rust. If I remember, if you search for it, type in MG, it shouldn't pop up. I think Because I remember there's a node where, yeah, there it is. You have to type Rust or dripping Rust, and yeah. Now the properties I used, yeah, I think I exposed most of them here. As you can see, I exposed the spreading, the contrast, and then the spreading smoothness, so that in Unreal I can duplicate the material and create a raster version and use it somewhere else. So with a Rust, what we connect is that we connect the ambient occlusion and create a curvature. Curvature usually works off of normal map, so I take the normal map and I create a curvature map and I added it to it. Now this one is currently black because I turned everything off, and I will show the final. I think I already went through the color. Yeah. Oh, usually for my colors at the end I tend to add an HSL, which is a hue saturation lightness, and I add it because I can expose them and also tweak it in the Unreal Engine if I want to. So if I were to change the hue right now, it adds like this greenish hue here. You can see, but that is very subtle. You don't have to add it. It's almost like the levels for colors, although it doesn't work as levels because it changes the hue, saturation, and lighting. Where usually the one you change the most is will be lighting, where to change the color and all that stuff. So yeah. Okay, so oh yeah, for the final pull for metallic, I just added a blend here. Reason I added this blend metallic here is for this specific thing here. So for the rust, I added a histogram scan, and I'll show an inverse grayscale just so that the metal changes because rust happens on metal, but it's actually not metallic. I hope I'm right on that one. But so let's go to the final material. So okay, so when you come down here to import material, import parameters, you see everything that changed. I renamed them, or at least I tried to rename most stuff, so that because if you don't name it here and you go to Unreal Engine, they won't be named. So I have to name it. So when I come here, let's see. So Rust, spread, contrast, dense. Okay, so let's say dense. Let's start with dense. So with dense, the default value I put, you can check also say your default values here, and then so they always save out. So let's see. Let's scroll in a bit with the material and let's see what we can see. I'm working with low resolution, that's what I'm scrolling in. Okay, so if I change min, what does the min do? Doesn't do anything. Okay, let's see the default. Can't see what this is doing, but that might be because wait, if the dents are gonna happen, they're gonna happen around here. Where was the dents? Okay, around here. So I think it was what exposed. No, this isn't the dent. Oh, this is the dent. Okay, so I think it's this one right here. Yep. Okay, dense opacity. Okay. So if I go to the final material, which you do by clicking here, there it is, dense opacity. So as you can see, I don't know if you guys can see it, but if you have the material on your side, you can see it looks a bit dented now. Like, I hope you guys can see the difference. So it looks a bit dented. It could have been more a bit perfect, a bit cleaner, but I just wanted it to be subtle. So this, now the grids look like they were hit by something. It's not a big dent, but it's just a bit visual. If I change the, so it's just something you can change in Unreal Engine slightly, just so that it gives a bit of different look to it. So if I to go to the next one, which is the rust. So now be careful. This is the default value that to save out as. So I put my defaults on 0, depending on what material or what it does. So as soon as I add color to this, you can see as what the rust is doing. Now this one has the max put all the way to 1. And also I clamped this so that it doesn't go over a certain value. But if I had to turn the rust all the way to 1, it comes like this. And if I in between them, it changes the material to something like this. And if I turn on Rust, you can see all these nodes activate. And this is where the material changes. So we go from this to the. Okay, so let's go back to the nodes here. Okay, so that's Rust spread. Now I go to Rust contrast. Can tweak more. If I had to zoom in, you see what the Rust contrast is doing right here. And these are not perfect, but it's just to give you guys an idea. And this kind of Rust looks more like dust, but you can't help. It doesn't even have to be Rust. You can make it dust too if you want. You can make it like a moss for something that's been aged, depending on how your scene that you're creating. Um, these values are usually for the end result. So you go to Rust spread and smoothness, which is basically how the contrast between how the Rust transitions into the metal, or vice versa. So I can make it subtle. The color can change a bit more, my opinion, but that's something different. Then we come back to dents, which is not a big deal right now. So this was so basically if I turn on dents, oh yeah, that was the difference. So if I turn on the dents opacity, although it seems that the Rust is overwriting it because they're fighting each other for visuals. So be careful how much visual. That's where this is when the dent scale comes into play. But there's so much going on that it becomes obsolete. That's why I made them optional. Okay, so over here is where it's also an important node. So where we change the grades amount. So now you see the problem here. If you, I made it so that basically if you tweak the number just very slightly, they touch, and they create this effect here. And I think I messed up the tiling a bit, but that's something different. I think it's 1.5. No, I think it's less than that. But if you tweak it slightly, it should all touch. Also, you can see the screws got a bit high resolution. Okay, so something like this will tweak it, but we don't want that. And if I had to go to the next value, which will be the X amount, this is where the tiling will change. Right, actually, let me yeah. So this is where we can change the tiling. Now, I remember that there's a way to make it so that the X and Y values always change together. But I don't think I use it for this material. Yeah, I think I didn't know about that when I was doing this material because I found out later on for another material. I actually can't remember exactly how to do it, but I know there's a way to do it where that's where it becomes a bit more complicated. Where you can make it so that these two combine into one node. So when one is changed, the other is changed. So a user doesn't have to always come here and type like, let's say they want it to be 9 tiles. You have to come in here and type 9, and then go to Y and then type 9 again. But if I remember, there's a way to do it so that yeah, they always start together. So this way, the user can. I did it like this so in Unreal Engine I can change the number of tiles I see without having to come back to design and resaving the material out again. And those are the only nodes I exported. And I could have exported more to export the nodes. Actually, I don't think I went over it. I could come here unless I want to change the pattern. Actually, let's do it for the center sphere. So let's say I wanted to give the user a way to change the center sphere. You can just come here, click expose. You change it to, you can rename it. If you save it as the same thing, on default it will save as something that is already in there. So you can save as center sphere. You can call it something else. I can say center shape. Now if I go to the base material, you go to the base material by just clicking on the grid or the material itself here. And you should see a new node here called center sphere. Now this is a very simple way of exporting it. But as you can see, I exported all these things here. Oh, actually, this is updated. It didn't used to be like this. That's cool. I can switch it to square, where as you can see, it changes the shape here. This and all that stuff. If I remember, I think some stuff didn't export properly into Unreal, but actually, I might be wrong on that. It's been a while. And if I wanted, I could expose the other material, the other options over here, uh, which would be like the X, the scale and all that stuff. Just give the user more variance in the end. My mouth is a bit dry right now, so sorry about that. But I think that's everything. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll provide the material in the description. You can download it, open it in Substance Designer, and look at it yourself. If you have any feedback, let me know. And yeah, I think that's it. So have a good one, guys, and see you whenever. Peace.